Hi guys, welcome to Barbells and Black Belts. My name is Tyler Beckley, and today on the podcast, we're going to be having Dr. Kyle Wagner come on, and we're going to be talking about the psychology of jiu-jitsu, teaching and learning, and how we can use a lot of the different principles that we teach to the kids to better yourself as an adult as well. Tune in and hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Thank you. Welcome to Barbell and Black Belts. This is my first podcast that we're going to be doing for the channel. Biggest point of our podcast is a lot of the people that are in our jiu-jitsu community, powerlifting community, just a fitness community in the Findlay, Ohio and Michigan areas. We have a lot of people within our community that have a lot of valuable information, not only about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or fitness or any of the things that kind of revolve around training, but also educational work, teaching, and that goes also on the educational side. As my wife is a 20-year educator, and I'm sitting next to interviewing my friend Kyle Wagner, and this is Dr. Wagner from the University of Findlay, and Dr. Wagner, or he's my friend Kyle. He's not only a PhD professor, but he's also a black belt in judo, and he's also a purple belt in jiu-jitsu at our academy as well. And has been an educator himself for a lot of years. And so guys like Kyle coming into the podcast and giving us the expertise is just as my friend Chris behind the camera for us said, some of the conversations need documented, and we talk about a lot of things that are, in my opinion, very, very valuable to not only myself personally, but also to the business and for teaching kids. And first podcast, I'm gonna stop rambling a little bit, but Kyle, tell them a little bit about yourself, man.
Sure. Kyle Wagner. Like you said, I'm a professor at University of Findlay in school psychology. Undergrad in psychology, started studying some motor learning for a while, was close to a master's, and then transferred over a school psych program, Sam Houston State University in Texas. Worked in schools for about 5 years between Texas and Minnesota, and went back for a PhD in educational psychology. Worked at a software company for a couple of years, and then felt the need to teach and do some research again, and ended up in Ohio, where I grew up. Well, not the city I grew up. I grew up in Ohio, just a couple hours east of here. Like you said, I judo black belt, started training judo around 2009. Actually started training jiu-jitsu to work on my judo ground game a little bit in 2019. And then, fell in love. I can't stay away from it. So that's me. That's how I got here.
I met Kyle because he walked into my jiu-jitsu academy, and we've became pretty good friends, and our kids are friends, and also his wife does jiu-jitsu in our academy as well, and his two daughters, and a lot of through coaching around him and teaching next to him and stuff too, we have so many, like I said, valuable conversations. And one of the big things, Kyle helps us out at the academy, comes in and helps with the kids class, and being in that he's in the profession that he is, I try to sponge up a lot of information, and our Amy and myself, we get a lot of how do I put it, just guidance and tips and his input in kind of how we're kind of developing kids too. So the point of the episode that I kind of wanted to talk to Kyle about was the psychology of teaching jiu-jitsu and learning jiu-jitsu, because there's a lot of parallels in why we would use jiu-jitsu as kind of as I call it, a tool to kind of learn, and a tool to use for betterment. Jiu-jitsu doesn't have feelings. It's not something that I believe a lot of people will, it's for this. They'll gatekeep what it is, and that's something that in the fitness community that's starting to be seen as a really kind of weird, because it's like saying I use the weight room for this, and you insert an answer that is positive, and if they're using it for betterment and change, then I don't see a problem with it. It's the kind of the same with jiu-jitsu. If someone tries to gatekeep it and it should be this, and it's sometimes it's for, we have younger kids. I got a 13-year-old kid that maybe is a little bit socially awkward, and she comes in and she starts flourishing because we gave her an environment. So jiu-jitsu in that case was used to kind of help someone that maybe had trouble socially, obviously for physical betterment, for, exercise people use it for. Some people use it to, just to de-stress after a work day, things like that too. But we also believe in it, I think, as coaches and as participants in it too, that it can be used for kids to really like leapfrog them into, having confidence and being a better student in school. Like there's a lot of things like that revolve around sports, and why me and you both, I think, agree that it could be jiu-jitsu, it could be baseball, it could be, under the right settings, it could be damn near anything like that. If someone's trying to get better, like I tell the kids all the time, like, I don't care if it's playing guitar, like try to do your best and stuff. So, Kyle, I'll kind of leave you to the first one. We talked about coaching BJJ and like the things that you see that are kind of equivalents to education, like teaching kids too. So if you want to take it from there.
Yeah. It's I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about it. It really doesn't matter what the thing is that you're doing. There's a benefit to it. There's the kind of character development, the physical development. There's all these aspects, and that sameness, I think, applies when it comes to teaching and learning also. Turns out when you look at cognition of how humans learn things, how most animals learn things, it's really consistent regardless of the scenario. That what changes is the kind of other inputs, right? Like it's harder to learn something when your arousal level's high. If you're scared, if you're freaked out, if you're nervous or stressed, it's hard to learn. As long as we keep all those variables kind of similar, learning is learning, and it comes down to exposure and teaching, being comfortable in the environment, being comfortable trying, failing, and learning from failing. I think are some of the best things we can do in terms of helping kids to learn, and in terms of whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the academy, whether it's in a dojo, on a baseball field, on a football field. Opportunities to respond, opportunities to practice something are our number one predictor. And we can start turning dials and making those things more or less efficient, making it transfer, making it work for different scenarios.
I think one of the ones when we were just kind of building the guts of what we were going to talk about in the episode, one of the topics that we touched on was letting kids know in jiu-jitsu that it's okay to fail. Like we expect it. Like one of the examples that I say a lot in my classes is another hobby of mine that I've been doing is drumming over the past like year and a half or so. I joke with them and I say, yeah, I'm like a one-stripe white belt in drumming. And it's something that no one picks up a guitar and they're like, here, Hendrix solo or something. Like no one expects that. They don't have the same kind of like bias, but somehow like everybody thinks they can fight, you know? And like certain people, like it's kind of weird. And this is less with the kids. We see this, they don't like expect it as much, especially when they're little. But adults, wow. Like they almost like they fear looking dumb when it's like, yo, we didn't expect you to know anything. Like this is your first, day, week, whatever it is,
Adults have forgotten how to be bad at stuff.
Yeah.
So someone's 30 years old, they've been walking for 30 years, they've been talking for 30 years, they've been reading for, 25 years, right? Everything they've done for more than a decade. And so they come into a situation like drumming, like jiu-jitsu, like anything else, and they forget what it's like to be new at it. Kids are still bad at stuff. Like we get a 7-year-old in the academy. That 7-year-old was just today struggling with reading. Today, right? So struggling on the mat isn't that different. It's just struggling with something physical. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about teaching kids is they're really receptive. You can say, hey, it wasn't a great result, was it? Well, no. It was. Like, okay, well, here's what we can do to make it better. Adults always, you were just talking about it today. I let someone take my back because I had a plan. Like, okay, well, maybe not. maybe let's walk that back a little bit. And I think that's one of the valuable things of something like jiu-jitsu for adults is you're going to be bad at it. And you're going to get immediate feedback that you're bad at it because someone's going to strangle you. Someone's going to almost break your arm. And you've got to, we talked about this with the child mentality, that kind of empty cup mentality that I've got to come in and recognize and acknowledge that maybe I don't know everything and I'm going to get it wrong. And getting things wrong is valuable. Getting things wrong is and having a process about it, right? So if we're just what we don't want to take away from this conversation is make people fail and make them fail a lot. That's okay.
No.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when there is failure, we shouldn't shy away from it. We should examine it, take it out. In business, they'll call this sometimes a no-fault postmortem, right? If something goes wrong, okay, nobody's going to get in trouble here. Nobody's going to get fired right now. Let's just see what went wrong, see what happened. Taking that out, examining it, figuring out what's going on, and then going and trying it again. Is it the same result or not? If it is, okay, examine it, re-examine it, figure it out. When I first joined the academy, I'd roll with Gary a lot, one of our guys, another bigger guy. Very talented, very methodical, has some great technique. And I would try some stuff that would kind of work in one scenario, kind of work in judo, and boom, 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 he'd catch me in something. And I would do the exact same thing again because I wanted to see where I failed, right? I'd do it the same, maybe with a variation, maybe just the same again. Because you've got to examine that failure to progress and get better.
Sure.
You got to put yourself in those situations. And bringing it back to teaching kids fail all the time. They're used to it. Say, hey, look, you ended up in this position. Cool. If you don't want to end up there, let's think about next time, make that knee elbow connection. Get onto your side, face your opponent, start working some of those things that we've talked about and making those connections.
I think as you were kind of talking about that, like I have certain kids in my head, like of that stresses that point, like sometimes like my brain, like I can't help it, but like right where your point is, I'm like, oh, that kid that Kyle just talked about, like the end part. I thought of not going to say their name because they're minors and stuff, but we have a kid with shaggy hair in our academy that helps us out sometimes at the 6 o'clock, and he was one of the easiest examples early on that. When his first year in jiu-jitsu, he would be very he would not want you to come over and see him doing the move wrong. He would be like, no, I'm going to get every rep right, because that was his kind of mentality in school too. He wanted to be the one that you came over. And as I told Amy, we use I'll say he wants the pat on the head, because that's just our slang for whatever the reward is. That's good job or the sticker or the A+. Yeah. He wants to always be seen that way, which good quality in my opinion. But what the thing he had to figure out was, even if he wasn't doing it right, right now, it's I'm going to help you fix it. And because I think the one thing Kyle said was, we're not telling you to go make them fail, because I think the one thing you said to me maybe a week or two ago is it without the chance to another try. You accept the failure, you see it for what it is. Hey, you left your arm hanging out, so kid took it home with him, but you say, here's what I would do to fix this a little bit, or here's a solution that you can do. And then the kid starts figuring out, just like this young man did, that, okay, if I just practice this a little bit, I'm going to get better and it's become more efficient, and then I'm not going to have those types of problems. So it's essentially like a kid figuring out that if hey, if I just problem solve, I can change my situation here. Yeah. And it's yes, that's what I'm telling you, that if you practice at the guitar every night, you're going to get better. Yep. And it's you're going to fail a whole bunch. And so if you mess up, bing, okay, you get an opportunity, do it again. Well, same thing in jiu-jitsu.
I think that's a big key when you practice every night, right? Because we were talking about this the other day. When it comes to working out, getting stronger, going to the weight room, the number one thing you can do is go a lot.
Yep.
Even without a coach, without a program, without periodization, without amazing technique, if I go to a weight room and I pick up weights and I get sweaty 3 days a week for 10 years, I'm going to get stronger. Yeah. It's going to happen. Now, can I optimize that? Absolutely, right? Yeah. We can talk about pairing lifts together the right way and building a program and periodization and deload weeks and going to failure and full range of, these are all things we can do to add a bit, but so much of it is that consistency. It's the exact same thing when you're learning a guitar, a drum, jiu-jitsu, anything, where just getting on the mat and engaging is engaging with it, right? Yeah. I'm going to come in and I'm going to try and I'm going to fail and I'm going to keep trying and I'm going to get better. And I think you could make the argument that with zero coaching if someone came in every day, did the drills, did the live rolls, after a year, they'd probably get better. Even if no coach ever came over to them and said, hey, do this instead.
Yeah.
I think if they worked at it, they would still probably get. Now, will they get even better if a coach is like actively watching, actively reinforcing, actively doing something? Absolutely. But that consistency and that that try, that effort, it is so. And it's the same thing in school, by the way. If you're teaching kids how to read, how to do math, getting them in the seat and actively engaged is 90% of the battle. That's going to be 90% of your job with 80% of your students.
I know we could run into like tons of topics. Like when we were starting to do this again, building kind of the guts of what we were going to talk about with the podcast, like the psychology of jiu-jitsu or the psychology of teaching and learning is so broad with that one too. So I feel like if you're pushing towards the right type of goal with the kids, it's like each time that the goal is come in, do your best. Like if you make it kind of simple, like come in, pay attention, do your best, keep repping the moves.
Yep.
We have to have some kind of like, some level of discipline, things like that with kids. But like, I guess the overall goal is it's like if we keep it kind of simple like that, you just keep trying. And you learn that if you keep trying, you're going to get better, you know? I think I even made the joke to one of my girls at the gym at Findlay Barbell, and I said it's kind of like you hold this like carrot in front of them, just like, okay, if you keep working harder, you're going to get this, and then you hand it to them, and then you back up a whole bunch, and then you're going, okay, here's another one, So it's like the general idea is like it's a reward mechanism that one, like you said, they can't fear failure because that's one that I feel it gets instilled in us. And as I said, me and Aim were having a conversation, I think like maybe a week or two ago, where sometimes as kids, we fear not getting the reward is a big problem too. You're like, not that you fear doing it wrong so much that you're just never going to step outside, that kind of box a little bit. And I think jiu-jitsu is a perfect example because like we're allowing you to, go ahead, as long as you're trying. Did you make a bad choice? Yeah, that guy got on my back and it led to a choke. Okay, all right, let's identify that issue and then we can work on that. Or, even kids, they know that if just to keep it real simple, if they show up to class, they do the warm-ups, they do the live drilling, there isn't a problem, we play games at the end and we have some fun. You know what I mean? And then they all get fist bumps and they all get like, hey, see you later, see you next week.
Yep.
And they start figuring out very quickly, like we're not writing down scores on who got tapped and who didn't and stuff, It's like, you want to go compete. People can see what, competition type stuff is, and I think that's important. But when it comes to the training room, it's like we're all just trying to get better, and they learn that.
And I think it's important to point out that while try hard without fearing failure is a simple mantra, it's not an easy mantra.
Yeah.
Right? Just like going to the weight room 3 days a week is a simple idea, but getting there can be tough. And I think one thing that you guys do a really good job of here is you, like you said, you set up the environment where it becomes clear after a kid's been here a few times that this is the way classes are going to go. If we're all in here, we're all working towards the same goal. We're all trying, we're all rolling, we're all learning. And at the end, we play games and have fun. We all get a fist bump. Coach cares about me. Everybody here is kind of happy that I'm here and we're doing a good job. They want to come back and they start realizing that the focus is on that development. The focus isn't on winning, losing, how many times they get tapped today in class. Now maybe for their own fun and development, that, hey, how many times can I hit an armbar from how many different places? Cool, great, that's your game you're playing. Fantastic. But don't get down on yourself when it's zero, right? Get in there and have a good time and have some fun with it is really, and we can say that about adults too, right?
Yeah.
I think this is why, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm sure somebody tracks them somewhere of how many people start jiu-jitsu and don't make it a month, don't make it 3 months, because it's one thing to lose a chess game or a game of golf. Yep. It's another thing to have some big sweaty guy on top of you, and it kind of sucks, and you lose, and it ain't fun in the moment. until you start to embrace the process. And you start realizing that, oh, now I'm on top more often. Or I've gotten better. It takes longer before that big sweaty guy's on top of me, right? Then it starts getting a little more fun. But man, that initial hump is brutal. It's not like the initial, I imagine it's the same for people learning an instrument, right?
Yeah.
Man, you're not going to sit down at a piano and play Mozart day one. It ain't going to happen. Mozart didn't sit down at a piano and play Mozart day one.
Yeah.
Right? It's just banging stuff out for a minute. Getting over that uncomfortable hump, being able to engage with the process and see some of that progress is key. That's why I'm a big advocate for training journals. I used to keep one real regular. I need to get back on it, but
I tell that to my friend Todd Williams. If you watch this, Todd, I need to be better. But well, I'll talk about it for a minute because I'm probably going to bring him on the podcast. So one of my good friends, he's a 2-time Olympian, and if you look him up on Wikipedia, the first thing it says is known for his very strict record keeping, or some wording of that, where Todd kept training journals, and he went to the Olympics twice in the 10K, and his training journals. He still knows numbers. Like, he'll tell me exact times. He'll be like, this guy ran, 50.5. I'll mess up the numbers, Todd, but he knows all these numbers, and he's very strict. And he asked me, I think maybe a year or so ago, he was like, how many rolls did you do last year? And I'm like, I have no idea. A lot. I did a lot. And he's like, I keep track of all my stuff, so I would know exactly how many rolls I did. And he's like, he knows like his volume of training and stuff. And I'm like, that's awesome. I want to do that. I guess, yes, if you're going to, like Kyle said, if you're going to try to be consistent about it, yes, that's the first step. But then if you're going to try to start optimizing and getting more efficient, then yes, that's another step too. It's kind of like I tell my training clients, if you're not going to keep a food diary all the time, then you need to instill habits that are going to go towards what the goal will be. It's just like, if you show up to jiu-jitsu 3 days a week, cool. All right, now how can we optimize that 3 days a week? Whatever it is there. But I think to touch on one of the points you said before too, on kids and adults doing jiu-jitsu and sticking with jiu-jitsu, I think that kind of hits the nail on the head too about the psychology of jiu-jitsu and what its sometimes downfall can be, because what its strength is also its weakness. Because what its strength is, it's like physical challenge at its very minimum. It's a physical challenge that people put themselves through. And I'll steal a quote from my nephew, has a tattoo that says, choose to suffer. And I understand exactly what that means. And I've heard people go, why did you get that? And he was like, if you don't know, you don't know, I guess. It's like jiu-jitsu is that. Like, you're choosing to have a big sweaty dude tap you out if you're a white belt. And you're going and they're doing that every single time. So basically, you're going in with knowledge that you're probably going to suck and you're probably going to tap out a whole bunch, or at a minimum, you're going to get really tired. That maybe physically pushes you much more than riding on the elliptical for an hour. Like, it ain't trying to choke your face and stuff. And the mindset of someone who would do that is someone who's knowing that they're going to get better. They're going to suck, and they're going to suck, and they're going to suck. And funny thing is, you get to black belt and you figure out that you still suck about it. you just suck a lot less,
Yeah.
But the idea that someone was willing to just continue to do that, and then, like my friend Todd will say, it doesn't stop. You just continuously, try to do that, and you try to better yourself that way. And I think adults are the ones that cut themselves down a little bit quicker because we're very aware of what that takes. A person that comes in and they can see what the average black belt, they say 10 to 12 years. So they come in and they've done 3 to 4 months and they understand what 10 to 12 years is going to start looking like. Or maybe even less, 3 to 4 days, and they see this giant uphill climb. And it is and it isn't though. Like, it is, you got to go do the work, but a lot of people do it. You know.
I think this is where the kind of philosophy behind what you're doing becomes important, right? I've heard this argument from other podcasts, other interviews, other discussions in martial arts, whether it be judo, jiu-jitsu, karate, taekwondo. The benefit of a belt is mostly for your coach to be able to look around and parry upright or figure out the drills for the night. You know what I mean? Like, the benefit of having a room full of people with belts on is to teach effectively and efficiently.
Sure.
And then every martial art kind of has their own idea of what a black belt is, whether it's you've got the basics, now you can move on and start being advanced, or you have mastered the content, or it's somewhere in between or even below. Realizing that the belt around your waist doesn't, be proud when you make that accomplishment,
Sure.
but don't make that your journey. Your journey is what are you getting good at? And this is another reason a training journal is great, right? It's like, hey, during rolls this week, I'm going to focus on attempting this takedown at least once every roll, attempting this submission, attempting this sweep, attempting this whatever it is.
Sure.
And eventually you'll see as you look at your journal, didn't hit it once, right?
Yeah.
Not a one time, got stuffed. And after a few weeks, hey, I hit it 3 times tonight. Hey, I hit it on everybody I try it on. That's progress, man. And then if you stick with it long enough that next crop of new white belts comes into the gym, then you start realizing, like, oh yeah, all these other people that are beating me up, they're also progressing. So I don't necessarily, it's hard for me to measure against the same person who's here every night I am. But now here's someone who hasn't been here.
Yep.
Holy cow, I was that person, now I'm stomping that person. Now I get to see some of the progress I'm making, and we get to see some of the differentiation and progress, and it's hard to find those reinforcers. I think, man, stripes on a belt, I think is an innovative thing that jiu-jitsu does really well. It's a small little tangible marker between the bigger belt accomplishments, right? I think, there's not a test involved with the stripe. A lot of times there's a test involved with a belt in a lot of jiu-jitsu academies. Sometimes I've seen some variation, right? You've seen some variation.
So debatable, yeah.
Right? Like, do you have a test? Not, what's that mean?
Yep.
But I think those stripes on a belt are nice little tangible reinforcers. I mean, geez, I'm a behaviorist at heart. When you talk about operant conditioning, reinforcers, punishers, I'm all in, and that's how we get to change behavior and modify behavior. Any kind of reinforcer we can give somebody, and I think again at the academy here, you guys have done a good job of building it into a lot of different places. It's a welcoming place, right? People come in the door. It's like Cheers, man. People come in the door. People are saying hi. People are walking out the door. They're saying bye. There's a camaraderie. People enjoy talking. They enjoy being here. So that's a reinforcer, and that's great.
Sure.
You get on the mat. If you're introspective and have this level of observation, you can see yourself getting better. Particularly people with an athletic background, right? They know what it's like to get better in an athletic endeavor, and they can feel themselves getting more efficient. Not everybody has that tool in their kit. So a stripe every now and again is a nice kind of objective, hey, you've been here and you're progressing, and it feels nice to get, right? Geez, I've got a black belt in Aikido and a brown belt karate and a black belt in judo, and it still feels real good to get a stripe on my belt.
I tell it to them all the time.
Nice.
Like, people that would scuff it, like kids, I have this conversation a lot where they talk about participation trophies and stuff, and I get it. It's like me and Kyle won. We were both college athletes. You were 2-sport for a bit, and then you switched just to 1 sport, right?
Football and track, and then stopped football during my sophomore year and just throwing hammers and discusses.
So at one point, 2-sport college athlete, and I played football in college as well. There's no participation trophies when you start getting older and stuff, and we all accept that, and that's completely fine. But it's like I won't hear this argument where 8-year-olds, if they show up to class and they're minding their P's and Q's on drilling and not causing problems and just things like that. Like, I have stopped a kid, I think, from getting a stripe. I'm gonna look at Amy for a sec. Well, maybe 1 kid or 2 kids ever from getting a stripe where I held one away, and it was devastating at the time, and both of those kids are still in our academy too, by the way.
And doing a good job.
And doing a really good job.
Kids.
Yep. But we don't like to do that because that's like the thing that is the kind of carrot. Like, hey, if you do all the things you're supposed to, and by the way, it's a piece of tape, or people get mad about like a ribbon or something. Like, bro, it's a ribbon. Yeah. And it's like, when they start to get up towards like high school, in my opinion, when you get into varsity sports, it's like, hey, like, I don't even mind if someone, like you go to the, I think it's like whenever you go to state, like everybody gets like a state medal because you went to the state, tournament or something. Like, I'm okay with that. That's pretty prestigious then too. So, but as kids, again, the psychology needs to be, in my opinion, like, if you work, if you try, you're going to get rewarded. And because then you're going to develop someone who wants to be that introspective person that has a mindset of, oh, look, I'm getting better. Now I'm a 26-year-old former college, wrestler or something, still wanting to grind a little bit. They go to a jiu-jitsu academy. You're like, okay, I know these people. I've been a part of this before. And that's what you want to instill,
Well, I think when you were opening up and talking, you were talking about kind of what is the purpose of jiu-jitsu? What are we doing? What are you doing it for? Self-defense, for fitness, for competition?
Yeah.
And I think you have the same philosophy I do, that it's a life skill. The things you learn in an academy, you apply to life. And it makes you better at life, right? And this is, and Jigoro Kano talks about this when he talks about the development of judo. Japanese jiu-jitsu, pre-judo, samurai time, pre-Meiji Restoration, the point was battlefield skill set. Maybe it had some application into life, but man, you were doing it for a very specific reason, right? Post-Meiji Restoration, we're getting into kind of a different philosophy on what it's for. Kano comes along and says, you know what? Jiu-jitsu's great. Let me take these schools, mash them together. We'll make judo. But judo, I'm calling judo, way instead of art, because it is a way. It is a tool for teaching people how to live life, right? Which is why the two basic principles, maximum efficiency and mutual benefit, are kind of the core principles of, we're trying to make the world a better world, and we're trying to use our energy as efficiently as possible to do so. And I think that's a philosophy that carried over, obviously, as judo developed into jiu-jitsu under the Gracies and others in Brazil. It's something you learn that makes you a better person, that makes you a better part of society. And if we're talking about raising the next generation of members of our society, we want to reinforce the traits that make our society better. People that are showing up, people that are doing their job, people that are listening and learning and working and helping their teammates and their classmates. I'll give stripes, I'll give ribbons, I'll give trophies that all day long.
Can we keep going towards that?
As long as that's what we're building, right?
Sure.
Like anything else, it's a tool that can be overused, underused, or used incorrectly. But at the end of the day, if my goal is to reinforce behaviors that I think are important, that make my community, my society, my world better, I'll use that tool all day long. And I think, again, I said it earlier, I think stripes are a great tool and a great innovation. I don't know if I've seen it in another martial art other than jiu-jitsu, a stripe on a belt. Until jiu-jitsu did it, then I've started seeing it poke up other places, actually. I don't know if you have.
A lot of the traditional martial arts, they'll do things like that.
They'll start doing that, yeah.
I mean, we use the IBJJF system on there too. It's something that, to kind of finish it up, I guess, of our podcast and what exactly we were talking about in the psychology, that is one of the most common questions I get with kids. It's, we're in our academy right now. It's on the other side of the room. On the wall, we have the IBJJF standards. And kids come up to me all the time, like, Coach Tyler, like, how many years until you get this coral belt and stuff? I'm like, stop asking me when I'm going to be a coral belt, by the way. But it's they ask about those stripes, and they see that, because as much as humans, we could sit here and be like, here, 9-year-old, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey and stuff. That means very little to 9-year-olds. They're like, I got this stripe, dog. And it's like, that's okay with me, because I'm like, cool, because you worked hard, you earned it. And if you keep working, you'll earn another one. If you keep working, because, I don't know, I always call it, these days I'll call it the Arnold philosophy. It's been said a bunch of times, but he basically, when I was a kid, I was like one of those Arnold kids where he said, it doesn't matter if it's a 20-minute workout, it's a workout. It doesn't matter if you read 5 pages, you read 5 pages, because it's better than no workout, it's better than not reading anything too. So we can, again, like you said, increase the efficiency of kids, but you got to get them on the mat, and you got to get them inspired to want to learn and to get better too. Yeah. So I think that's, I don't think I brought up the terminology, but Bruce Lee will call that too, like the child mind, where you just have this exploring, I'm not sure the word to put on it too. Like you just have this yearning for knowledge, and it's like, what else don't I know?
Yeah.
What else can I figure out here too? And that they just want to, before the podcast, I was saying the toddler isn't thinking if he asks a question, it's going to be dumb. He's like, what's this? What's this? What's this? And it can kind of get annoying a little bit, but when I have a 35-year-old guy in front of me that didn't ask a question because he thought he'd be dumb asking the question, I'm like, yo, dog, you just got choked. Ask me the question. And I'd much rather that too. And especially when it's in training and stuff, like they get hit with the sub, ask the question. Why'd that happen? I mean, you're leaving your arms out, whatever, the answer might be. But it's just sometimes, when you're teaching kids, I feel like it's just so much easier to really start them on that path with using a sport like jiu-jitsu. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, we went through a lot of topics today. Again, I've been trying to come up with a lot of ideas on some of the different topics we're going to do for the podcast. And this was a perfect one. These are conversations that me, Kyle, and my wife, after practice, a couple of the other guys I'm going to have on the podcast, Dr. Larry Funky, we sit around after practice a lot and talk about, hey, how to not only develop kids, but, better ourselves and, all kinds of stuff too. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I have, a lot of guys within our community and women, not just guys in general, but a lot of just people in the academy that are great voices that bring a lot of wisdom and a lot of just really good ideas into the fold that, we try to be really open-minded about not changing things or not being afraid to change things. Like if we have better ideas and better ways to do it, then that's what we try to, as the leaders of the, kind of our jiu-jitsu community of having that kind of vibe all the time. Like, hey, we're okay to make a mistake too, the same way, and, I'm always trying to push that on the kids and the adults, just the same way. But Kyle, anything else you want to finish up with?
No, other than, I think if we had to put things in a nutshell is whether you're coming to learn jiu-jitsu, and I think you should. It's a great release. It's a great way to stay healthy and be active and cognitively engaged while you're physically engaged. But whatever you're doing, we should all be doing things that we're learning. We should all be learning things all the time. If you want to be as active and as healthy as possible for as long as possible, you want to be learning as much of your life as you can. You want to keep those parts of your brain active. So go do something. But when you start doing something, whatever it is, do it consistently. Go do it. Trick yourself into doing it. Reward yourself for doing it. If you get a donut every time you come to a jiu-jitsu class, get a donut every time you come to jiu-jitsu class.
I love it.
Whatever it is, get there consistently and give it a year. Give yourself a year to fail at something and then say, I don't want to do it anymore. And understand the failure is part of the journey, but whether you're a kid and an adult, get after it, try it, be consistent with it, and keep a journal. See if you can track your progress, man. Data is data. Keep data on yourself and watch that trajectory grow. So I would say whether you're teaching kids, teaching adults, starting something yourself, whatever it is, give it a good, honest try before you say, that's too much armpit for me. I can't handle any more armpits in my face. I'm done. Give it a year of armpits.
It ain't always armpits.
It ain't always armpits.
I got to sell my product a little bit. So.
No, because what you'll notice, it will be less armpits, and you'll have a blast with it. So whatever you're doing, have some fun with it. Give yourself a chance to fail. Enjoy the failure, and examine it and have a good time with it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. First episode of Barbells and Black Belts, the podcast. And hope to continue to make great content for you guys. Thank you very much.